Welcome to the Harry Bridges School of Labor, presented by Labor United Educational League. Our purpose is to educate the workers of America on the strength of unions and to foster a class-conscious workforce. We aim to connect the struggles of the past with the struggles of today to empower the labor movement to transform from their present hopeless defensive fight into an aggressive attack upon capital. We plan to empower workers with knowledge regardless of industry or type of work, bringing all workers to a class-oriented trade union movement. When we break for our questions and comments period, please keep all questions and comments to 90 seconds in order to keep our time schedule. We must enforce this time limit and need to cut off those who go beyond this limit. We'll give notifications at a 60-second mark. And tonight's class will be on tasks of a shop steward. This was a class that was actually requested a couple of months ago by a couple of our members, and we felt it would be important to add this class to the curriculum for this year. And it's a very important topic. The work that gets done inside a union, especially by the shop steward, who is essentially the first line of defense. So we're gonna get into this presentation. I was gonna read the first section for us, and here we go. First, we'll go over what we're learning tonight. Our first section will be on what is a shop steward, and we'll go break that down to some of their duties and essentially the shop steward rights. And then the section is also important in its own way. Some of the biggest mistakes made by stewards. Essentially, it's a guide on what not to do. And then our last section will be on labor law. We'll focus on FMLA and grievances, where we'll focus on past practice grievances. And from that, we're going into our first section.
Yes. Section 1. What is a shop steward? What is a shop steward? Shop stewards are the backbone of a union local and are the key to building a strong democratic labor movement. Stewards provide a vital link between the union's elected officers and the membership. They have no special privileges or rights different from their colleagues. Stewards are either elected by the membership or appointed in accordance with the local union's bylaws. They are advocates for their brothers and sisters in the workplace, and consequently, they must be accessible to the members they represent. They are expected to act fairly and impartially, and, by example, represent the highest principles of the trade union movement. Stewards are generally the first line of defense in a union. They are working members who represent the members on the shop floor. Shop stewards are responsible for making sure processes are followed and all members are treated fairly in accordance with the contract. A union is only as strong as its members and their stewards' commitment to and acknowledge of the contract. Duties of a shop steward. Educating members about the terms and conditions of their collective bargaining agreement and answer questions about the collective bargaining agreement. Monitoring and enforcing the collective bargaining agreement with the employer. Requiring that members adhere to the provisions of the collective bargaining agreement. Working directly with the union's business agent regarding all grievances and disputes, including the investigation and presentation of grievances and the direct representation of members who are subject to discipline or discharge. Posting all official communications from the union and/or from the assigned business agent on the appropriate union bulletin board. Duties of the shop steward continued. Reporting to members the activities of the union, general membership meetings, steward meetings, seminars, elections, political action programs, etc. Advising members of the services and opportunities provided by the union, specifically those which come directly from the collective bargaining agreement and those that come from the union, health and welfare and pension benefits, retiree benefits, dues checkoff, sick benefits, etc. Endeavoring at all times to create favorable conditions and to maintain harmonious coworker relationships, but when not possible, to resolve differences or disputes between or among members. Always conducting himself or herself in such a manner as to set a good example for the members they represent and all members of the union. Steward's rights. The equality rule. The shop steward is the legal equal of the boss when an official union. Wait. Stewards can investigate and argue grievances, request information, and otherwise defend UE members. Stewards can openly disagree and argue vigorously with management during grievance meetings, question management's authority, and demand certain actions of management, all without risking disciplinary action. There are limits. They include threats of violence and actual violence, extreme profanity, name calling, and personal attacks, any other actions that may be prohibited by the contract. Steward's rights continued. No reprisals. The boss is not allowed to use discipline, either real or threatened, or any other form of intimidation to discourage stewards from doing their job. Management cannot assign you to the most undesirable jobs or more closely supervise you than other workers. Equal standards. Bosses cannot hold stewards to higher standards than other workers. Stewards cannot be singled out for unusual discipline to set an example or because you should know better. The only exception, not carrying out contractual responsibilities required of elected union officials. Steward's rights continued. If the boss breaks these rules, the union should most likely file both a grievance under the contract as well as an unfair labor practice, ULP, charge with the Labor Board, NLRB. The time limit for filing a ULP charge is within 6 months of the violation. As in the case with most other grievances, a workplace strategy for solving the problem is often much more effective than dealing with the NLRB, especially because the labor board is often frustratingly slow to respond. Continued. Stewards have the right to grieve unfair treatment, whether you saw it happen or someone calls it to your attention. Stewards have the right to carry out investigations of grievances, including interviews of grievance and witnesses. Stewards have the right to request the information needed to process a grievance from management. These requests should be in writing. Management is obligated to respond. Stewards have the right to be present in any meeting between the boss and an employee if it might lead to discipline. Weingarten writes, stewards can take notes, stop the boss from harassing or abusing the worker, and ask the supervisor to clarify any questions the member may not understand. Continued. Stewards have the right to be present every time a grievance is being adjusted or settled. Even if a worker has taken up the grievance on their own, the boss can't bypass the union when responding. Stewards have the right to stand toe-to-toe with the boss when conducting union business. They can get loud, angry, forceful, and speak their mind during grievance meetings. This is the equality rule in action. Stewards have the right to organize and encourage fellow workers to take action in support of an issue or grievance, so long as those conversations don't take place on work time or interfere with job duties. The boss can't stop you from getting people to wear stickers, sign petitions, carry signs, or take similar actions on break or lunchtime. Of course, stickers, buttons, and caps can be worn all the time unless there's a special reason for a dress code.
And with that, we'll break for our first round of questions and comments. I see we have one hand up already. There was a comment I wanted to make, and it's from the first slide. And it's actually the last sentence from the first slide. And when I saw this, when we were creating the presentation, this sentence is highly important and isn't taken seriously enough within the labor movement. A union is only as strong as its members and their stewards' commitment to and knowledge of the contract. I could say from personal experience, we have stewards that don't know the contract, have never seen the contract, and somehow they're stewards. The vast majority of the members don't know the contract, and that puts us in a situation where we are under attack by bosses and we don't have the ability to fight back because the members just don't know. And our union representatives don't know. And I've personally been involved with starting a caucus within my union. Uh, and we are working on building up the strength and membership and knowledge within the membership. And it is growing.
So I am a shop steward at my workplace. A couple of notes, especially on your wine garden rights. It is very important that your coworkers know about their wine garden rights because especially during any conversation with management where there is a possibility of discipline or any kind of change in work conditions, management does not have to inform the workers of their rights. This has to be asked for by the workers themselves. So make sure that people know anytime you're going in to have a talk with your supervisor about something or anything that may lead to a discipline or a formal discussion of sorts, you invoke your wine garden rights. And as well, it was mentioned earlier, stewards have the right to be a representative in any kind of investigation. Stewards are not allowed to impede that investigation in any way, but as mentioned, they can ask clarifying questions. Another important rule is if there's any accusations leveled against the workers, always ask for where's your proof of evidence of this? Because a lot of times these investigators will try to throw whatever out, and if they can get someone to even maybe slightly affirm there might be something to that, they will then go after for that. So always ask for proof of that. And as well, during these meetings, you have a right to, with your steward, call a stop and caucus for a bit, to where basically you both go off in a room, talk somewhere. If you are denied the right for a caucus, you are then within your full rights to say, okay, then this meeting is over right now. We can reschedule another date. And if they will say, well, why are you trying to impede an official investigation? You can say, I'm not trying to impede the investigation. We are just simply not able to exercise our rights. So until we are able to, we can reschedule for this other time. But until then, we refuse to answer any questions. And you are in that way not impeding the investigation, and they may try to throw reprisals at you, but you will be in the right, because if they are not allowing you your right to caucus during these meetings, that's a big issue. Thank you.
Yeah, and that right to caucus is extremely important because without speaking with your union rep, how can you have proper representation? It's not possible.
Yeah, I thought the point about reporting the activities of the union to the members is also important because, there are a lot of guys, I think it's typical in a lot of unions where, especially when you get to a sizable union, um, where a lot of the members don't go, whether they don't have time or whatever it is. But I think that if we remember to, as a steward, if you go to your meetings and then you're able to relay that information to the rank and file, I mean that really just kind of cements you in a better place with the rank and file. I think that also gives them confidence in you as a steward and as a leader. And it just, I feel like it kind of sets you up to, um, down the road to basically have kind of, I guess, a better position within the job site or the shop.
That is very important. And unfortunately, most unions today, these messages don't get down to the members on what's going on. If I had a dollar for every time I heard a rep say, if you want to know, show up at the union meeting, uh, I wouldn't have to work. But well, that's where we come in. That's where the rank and file organizers come in, like what we're trying to develop here with the Labor United Educational League. Uh, that's and like I mentioned earlier, I've worked in building. I'm working in building a caucus within my local, and that's one of the first things we're doing. We will bring back any and all information that the union is not sharing with the members on the shop floor back to the members on the shop floor. Now, granted, a lot of people hear shop floor, they go, I don't work in a shop. I mean, that's generic term. I just want to clear that's generic terminology for in the workplace. So everybody knows you work in a supermarket. That's what we mean by you work on the floor in the supermarket. That's the shop floor. Uh, anyway, you work. That's what we're referencing here. But Tyler, New York, you have the floor.
Um, yeah, it's now for the people who don't attend, are the unions required to publish minutes from the meetings?
No, they are not.
Oh,
They have to keep it on record, but they are not required to publish it to the membership.
but if the members request it, do they have the right to access it?
At least for my union, that they've had people in the past who are like, well, can you publish the minutes of whatever meeting? It's like, well, show up at the meeting, and and leadership will sometimes just tell them like, well, go pound sand, or you should have been at the last general meeting. So it would be really nice to have those, but unless it's specifically written in the bargaining agreement, they don't put those out. And usually they'll claim there's confidential information like budgets or other numbers. So,
Yeah, that is true. That and there will be some confidential information. But at the same time, a lot of that information is available publicly anyway. They're just using that as an excuse. Like budgets, like the union's financial reports. You could go on ProPublica and find every financial annual financial report for every union in the country. All right, so this it's not that this information isn't out there. All right, that it's an excuse of why they can't give membership the information they need. And most unions have websites that are password protected for members to get confidential information. They could certainly publish it there at the very least. Um, but with that, the time is now 8:25. We're gonna move on to the second section.
All right, this second section is a union steward's biggest mistakes and what to avoid as a shop steward. So, mistake number one, failing to represent fairly. Not only can this leave the union open to being sued for breaching its duty to provide fair representation, it's just not the right thing to do. It undermines the whole purpose of the union and the very idea of solidarity. Every grievance should be weighed on its own merits, regardless of who files it. Mistake number 2, making backroom deals. Management is notorious for trying to get stewards to trade grievances. I'll let you have this case if you drop the one we talked about yesterday. Every member deserves a fair shake, and every grievance needs to be evaluated on its own merit. Never agree to anything you would be uncomfortable telling your entire membership about. Any group settlement of grievances should be done by the entire union committee, not the steward by themselves. Mistake number 3, failing to organize. Stewards are much more than grievance handlers. They are the key people in the local who mobilize the membership. They must be talking union and fighting union all the time. Each and every grievance and incident must be looked at in terms of how it can increase participation, build the union, and create new leaders. The union is built by involving the members in winning grievances. From wearing buttons and stickers to signing petitions, working to rule, or acting as witnesses for the union during grievance meetings, these actions help build the union. Mistake number 4, promising remedies too quickly. You're hurting both the member and your credibility if you pass judgment on a grievance prior to a thorough investigation. Only after you have spoken to the grievant and witnesses and consulted the contract, the employer's rules, and past practices are you in a position to make that determination. Given the frequency of poor and mixed arbitration decisions, no steward should make promises about the expected outcome of a grievance. Mistake number 5, failing to speak with new workers. The most important way a union gains the support of a new member or a potential new member is by one-on-one contact with the steward. You not only want to provide new workers with information, but need to build a personal relationship and begin to get them involved in union activities from their first day on the job. The steward should provide the new worker with a copy of the union contract and sign the worker up into the union and not leave that to management. Mistake number 6, failing to adhere to timelines. Even the strongest ironclad case can be lost if the timeline specified in your contract isn't followed. Even if management agrees to an extension, it is not in the union's interest to let problems fester and grow. If you do get a formal extension of time limits, be sure to get it in writing. If you can't get it in writing, make sure there are other union witnesses present. Mistake number 7, letting a grievance go unfiled. Every grievance that goes unfiled undermines the contract people struggled hard to win. While most members see changes and problems only in terms of the impact on them, the steward needs to be able to understand a grievance's impact on the contract and the union as a whole. Remember, the union has the right to file a grievance even if the worker involved doesn't want to. When a basic principle is involved that could affect other workers, the steward should file the grievance. Mistake number 8, meeting with management alone. When you meet with management alone, suspicions may arise as to what kind of deals you might be making. It also allows management to lie or change its story. More importantly, when the steward meets with management alone, it takes away an opportunity for members to participate in the union and to understand that it's really their organization. Sometimes it is hard to avoid meeting with a supervisor or foreman alone. They approach you at your workplace or call you into their office. If this happens, be sure you tell the other union reps what the discussion was about. Mistake number 9, failing to get settlements in writing. Just as you should protect yourself by not meeting alone with management, be sure to get any settlement in writing. Putting the settlement in writing helps clarify the issues and keeps management from backing down. Many grievances are settled before they get to the written stage of the procedure. The steward should keep a notebook with all the important information concerning the settlement. Who was involved, what was the issue, and what was the settlement? Remember, a grievance is any problem that arises. The hundreds of day-to-day issues that never reach the written grievance stage can be very important when trying to prove past practice. Facts, not vague memories, are needed to prove past practice. Mistake number 10, passing the buck. It is the steward's responsibility to deal with the members in their area, keep them informed, investigate problems, decide whether to grieve matters, and do the first step, oral presentation of the grievance. Sometimes stewards are tempted to pass the buck and refer members to the union president or another union officer. While it is important to get advice and support if you are unsure about how to proceed, having a strong union means everyone does their part. Mistake 11, failing to work as a union team. Stewards are most effective when they work as a team. Each steward should know what is happening in different work areas. Stewards should check with the chief steward, other officers, or even older union members to make sure they understand past practices that may exist in the workplace. Mistake number 12, failing to publicize victories. Publicizing each and every victory is an important way to build your local union. This publicity not only has a chilling effect on the employer, but helps educate our own members on their contractual rights. All too often, members don't hear about union successes. Let them know we've won and that it's a victory for the entire union. It gives you something to celebrate, helps build pride in the union, and builds the inspiration needed to carry on.
And with that, we'll break for our second round of question and comments.
Hey, so on the subject of getting it in writing, it is very important you do that because one of the issues I'm running in with someone right now is their supervisor and him had a verbal agreement to go telework at his cabin out in Wisconsin, but since he never got that in writing, it's become a bit of a pain in one of his cases. A good thing that someone can do is if you can't get something in formal writing, write an email to yourself and copy a bunch of other people to where of whatever occurred. So you have that timestamp to where later, if needed, you can go back and say, hey, I've got on this day at this time, this paper that says I sent a message to these people regarding this other thing to where you've got people that can back you up on that now. Thank you.
Yeah, so I've heard people say this in the past. I don't know what it exactly means though, but I've heard people say don't sign the arbitration clause. What is that exactly? Does that mean to not? Is that like an option that you could even do if you were in a union, like not sign it?
Not sign an arbitration clause. I'm not sure what that would mean. I know don't sign discipline, which
Well,
used
it's
to
like
sign.
it's referring to like when they want to arbitrate things with the union rather than like through a third party or whatever. I don't know. I just heard it being said, and I was just curious. But
So generally an arbitration clause is something that's usually in collective bargaining agreements where the union has sole representation for the workers on grievance and other issues. Instead of having either the workplace say, well, let's use these people to dispute this thing. The union is like, no, that we have the right to get to be the sole arbitrator of any issues with the contract. Now, if you're in something where it's a little like if you maybe want to look into a employment lawyer on whatever issue, you have the right to do that and can decline, but the union's got the first right for representation of any arbitration.
What did you say about? I missed that part. What information do they have on union websites that you mentioned they should have that information?
I believe that was in regards to the question earlier about minutes to the meetings. That
Okay.
Most unions have, locals have websites, and they could that are password protected, so they will be able to show minutes there.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So with this section, I found a lot of it was important. In that section where it talked about union's failure, steward's failure to meet the membership and the new workers as they come in. And there's one task. I could say my union's pretty good at that. They get the members right away, and they do a union day with them as soon as, basically as soon as they start. The one thing they don't do that was mentioned in that, they don't share the contract. That's changing now as my recent run for Shop Steward in my local, in my on my campaign flyer, I had a QR code that went to the contract, and as new members come in now, I share them. I give them that QR code to get them the contract. So that's something that's vitally important for all members.
Yeah, if your collective bargaining agreement has a section on it, mine, for example, has a thing where for any new employee orientations, the union has a designated period of time called the NEOP, where basically they'll give a orientation outline of the union, its responsibilities, what are some of the benefits, and how one can join. That's usually an hour time, but this probably might not be the standard, but it is very important that you definitely reach out to new members in whatever way possible. And then one thing, at least for on the note of having the contract available for general people, I ran off the entire thing and I have it in a binder in my office to where anyone ever has contract questions, I can just whip that thing out right there. It's about 258 pages, about 52 articles, but any question anyone has, I always keep a copy of that handy, and I try to get people, or at least send them to where there's a link of it.
I got so much I could say on this section. There was the part where it mentioned not to make promises you can't keep because of past mistakes made in grievance cases, and those decisions could come back and bite you. And that's very important. And it's something that a lot of class-oriented stewards now, as we get them in, see them grow within the labor movement, they're stuck with decisions that they have really no way around. They got to be rebargained, essentially, because any bad decisions got to be rebargained because somebody before them was not properly prepared and didn't know what they were doing. And I will say this, there's something that was mentioned a lot in this section that a lot of people might not know about. And it will be brought up in our third section here. And it's very important because it really, really, really decides a lot of these bad decisions and whatnot. And that's called past practice. And we're going to be talking about grievances here in the next section. And we put a spotlight on past practice grievances because a lot of people don't know what it is. Even if something's in your contract and somebody in your former leadership made a mistake and allowed a grievance to be filed and went against that contract, that's now the contract essentially, even if it's in writing. So we got to be very careful with that. But with that, we're gonna go. The time is now 8:41. We're gonna go to our third and final section here.
Thank you. So, section 3, labor law, especially FMLA or the Family Medical Leave Act, and grievances. The Family Medical Leave Act, FMLA, may provide an answer. FMLA covers public employees as well as private sector workers who have at least 1 year of service, have worked at least 1,250 hours in the past 12 months, and whose employer has at least 50 employees at work sites within a 75-mile radius. The law is enforced by the Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division. FMLA provides for unpaid medical leave of up to 12 weeks a year for employees themselves or to care for immediate family relatives, spouse, child, or parent who have a serious health condition. In addition, an FMLA leave may be taken to care for a newborn child or a child newly adopted or placed in foster care. If you qualify for an FMLA leave, the boss cannot deny it based on inconvenience or other grounds. Additionally, an employee's medical benefits must be continued during the leave, and he or she is guaranteed their old job or an equivalent position upon returning to work without loss of seniority. However, if your leave was foreseeable, you must give the employer at least 30 days notice, or the leave can be denied until 30 days has elapsed. The boss can also require a second, and in case of a dispute, a third, medical opinion at company expense over whether a serious medical condition exists. And though insurance is continued during the leave, it is the employee's responsibility to make any required contributions at the risk of having coverage canceled. FMLA leave need not be taken in one continuous block of time. Say, an employee periodically goes for chemotherapy or kidney dialysis. Leave can be scheduled on an intermittent block of hours or days separated by work time, or reduced schedule, fewer hours than regular shift, basis, depending on medical necessity, as a matter of right until the 12 weeks is exhausted. The same holds true in caring for qualifying relatives. An example would be dividing the care of an ill parent with your brothers and sisters. If you are responsible only for certain days or hours, a reduced schedule or intermittent leave is the answer. To care for newborns, however, leave must be taken all at once unless the employer gives permission otherwise. FMLA provides minimum standards and levels of benefits for some workers. Any union should use FMLA as a floor to negotiate better and additional benefits. So here are some areas to consider. Coverage for part-timers or workers with less than 1 year of service, or for your workplace if under 50 employees. Extended leave beyond 12 weeks for legitimate family or medical reasons, including those not covered under FMLA, or right to borrow against future leave entitlement. Paid leave and continuing accrual of seniority and all benefits for the length of the leave. Elimination of boss's right under FMLA to automatically apply vacation or sick days to leave. Option should rest with the employee. Payment of all insurance contributions by employer during leave to avoid any cutoff of benefits. Eliminate second or third medical opinions. Use of intermittent or reduced schedule leaves as a matter of right for all types of family and medical leave, guaranteed of old job, not just equivalent position, upon return to work. So, grievances. Grievances can arise from a number of issues. There may be an unsafe labor practice that was never addressed. There may be a violation of the CBA or the collective bargaining agreement. There may even be some harassment by managements or violations of federal labor laws. 5 common grievances are past practice, ULPs or unfair labor practices, EEO, equal employment opportunity, contract violations, wrongful termination / seek to make whole. Past practice. Due to the lack of time, we will focus on one type of grievance that seems to be less known among rank and file members, the past practice. A past practice is any long-standing, frequent practice that is accepted and known about by both the union and management. A practice that meets the standards of being a bona fide past practice is considered to be part of the contract. Since it is part of the contract, grievances can be filed if management violates a past practice. In most cases, management cannot end a past practice without first bargaining with the union. In some cases, management must wait until contract negotiations to change a past practice. The longer a practice has been in effect, the more weight it carries. We are talking about years, not weeks or months. Many arbitrators think that a practice must have been in effect for 3 to 5 years, and crossover contracts, that is, it must have been in practice during the life of at least 2 contracts. To be valid, a practice has to occur many times. The more times, the better. It should also occur consistently. A practice that happened 5 times 4 years ago and hasn't happened again is not a very strong past practice. An exception to this might be a practice that occurs around a specific holiday. If every year for 7 years, management has allowed workers to go home after working only half a day on the day before Christmas without penalizing them, this could be a valid past practice. Whatever the past practice is, there must be a clear and consistent pattern of it being repeated in the same way each time. If there are minor deviations, then there must be at least a predominant pattern of consistency. While a past practice does not have to have been negotiated, it must be something that both parties know about. On the management side, it is not always good enough for a low-level foreman to know. It must be higher management. There are 3 categories of past practice. They are contract clarifying, independent, and contract conflicting. The contract clarifying past practice is a practice clarifies the meaning of contract language that is vague or general. An independent past practice is a practice that is not addressed by any contract language. Most of these are benefits that workers take for granted and so are not included in the contract. Management can terminate these practices if they can prove that there has been a significant change in the original conditions that started the practice, there has been significant ongoing employee abuse of the practice, if they notify the union during contract negotiations that they will end the practice during the next contract. For the grievance resolution procedures, they go in a step process of discussions with higher bodies. So, as mentioned earlier, most grievances will try to be settled informal at the workplace. They start very informal, and if resolutions can be reached on the grievances there, great. If not, then a formal process begins. If issues are outstanding, gather whatever information you can. Get as much details on what happened, get support of those who can collaborate the grievance claimed, and know the collective bargaining agreement. These are your best tools for getting this grievance resolved, especially in your favor. Usually, they start off between one worker and a supervisor. However, if the resolution can't be resolved between the complainant and management at a lower level, it will go to a higher body like the shift head or the board of a company, and sometimes even the national board of a union. And then if still no resolution is reached at that point, the issue will then go to arbitration with a neutral arbiter hearing both sides and then making a recommendation. Usually, though, if the grievance is formal, then the resolution is also binding. Management violating that resolution can result in a new grievance as well. And the next slide, this is a kind of a visual idea of it. So the employee starts with the grievance. Usually you try to work it out between that worker and the supervisor if it's a local thing. If it can't get worked there, then it goes to a formal grievance in writing where now you've got the first line supervisor, that worker, the personnel manager, you could get the factory, the plant, or the section chief. And you may also have from the union now, you've got more stewards coming in, the chief steward. There may even be a committee that deals with grievances stepping in. And then if it doesn't get resolved there, it'll go to a step 3 process where it'll get kind of the heads of both involved in trying to work out a resolution to it. And then if no sides agree to that, it could go to arbitration and even sometimes to the National Labor Relations Board or federal court even.
And that will break for our last round of questions and comments.
This is regarding FMLA. So, just real quick, this is something that happened to my father. In 2018, I was playing football. I've told some of you this. I had a heat stroke. My liver, my kidneys failed. I was airlifted. I died. I code whited twice where they had to resuscitate me. And I ended up staying in the hospital for 35 days. I was in a coma for 21 days. So my dad was a nursing aide at the time, CNA, at this nursing home. And he told them that he had to come be with me in the hospital because I would be alone the whole time I was there. But he ended up losing his job. He for missing too many days, he got fired.
Yes, that still falls under FMLA, and he could have filed a wrongful
So he
termination.
could have exercised his rights. He just didn't know his rights.
That's a common problem, and that's why FMLA was put in this
It
presentation.
breaks my heart, man. Seriously.
Because a lot of people don't know. Statute of limitations may be up on that.
Really?
But
Oh, okay, yeah.
but I would still look into it. 'Cause we don't know. That's 6 years ago at this point, I believe.
It was, yeah, 2018.
Yeah, but you should definitely look into it. And there could be state laws that build off of the federal law. Remember, the FMLA, which is a federal law that was passed in the 90s, it's the minimum standards. That doesn't mean it's the final standards. There could be states that have larger standards. You could have more you could have more standards negotiated in a contract. For instance, uh, the forcing you to use vacation time. That's in my contract. They can't force you to use any time. It's up to you, the
Yeah,
individual.
that's what they
what
were
you
making him
use.
do at first. Yeah, at first they were making him take vacation days. Yeah, I remember it clearly. And they didn't tell him like they let him go until after I came home. So it's really bad. But thank you for
Yes, that is a violation, a major
I thought
violation of his
so. I
rights.
thought so. Yeah, my mom
Now,
didn't, but she's a different worker. Yeah.
especially as you say, it was what, 35 days, 30 something
Yes,
days,
35 days.
35 days. Well, you get 60, you get essentially get 60 work days with 12 weeks guaranteed,
Okay. Yeah,
protected,
so that was tight.
unpaid, but you get guaranteed protected. So yeah, that sounds like a violation of your rights.
And so for those workers without a union and therefore without I guess a steward, and they need to file for any grievances, is it a similar process? It's just less representation since you don't actually are in a union? Or is it even just a tactic to kind of start the process of getting a union, I guess, organized?
Well, it could be used to organize a union. But unfortunately, you don't really have a grievance procedure if you don't have a union.
Okay.
There is the possibility of filing an unfair labor practice with the National Labor Relations Board, assuming your workplace is covered under the NLRA. If you work in a place that's not covered under the NLRA, like anything that's covered under the Railway Labor Act or most public sector employees, there's usually other avenues that are listed in those laws, and that's how you would file a grievance with whatever body is in charge of handling those laws.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, if your workplace is not organized as well, try to familiarize yourself with what federal and state labor laws that are in existence, because there may be safety standards under Department of Labor, depending on where you work, that if they're not being followed, that could be something you could bring a grievance to. The ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, that's another one where you can really bring heat to your workplace if you notice that there are possible safety or other violations related to that act as well. And while the National Labor Relations Board is an avenue, it is just kind of also remember it's set up the way it is purposefully, and it is also underfunded and overworked as many other avenues for workers to seek redress. So kind of prepare yourself for the long haul, but a good little book to familiarize yourself. It is called Labor Law for the Rank and Filer. It's about a yay thin book, but it's a really good little reference for labor laws that can be enforced in any workplace, not just a unionized one, that I think people should familiarize themselves with. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Important. The term, you should all write this down, collective bargaining agent. You need a collective bargaining agent in a workplace. And you only get that if you, and stand me if I'm corrected on this, you have to sign enough cards for a union in a workplace, and you have to have so much percentage, and then you can ask to have an election. Remember, the boss works with a group of people who claim they're unionists in order to deny the real union the right to be a collective bargaining agent. I went through this. In New York City, the teachers union was under the influence of the Communist Party USA. It was formed in 1916. And during the McCarthy period, we tried to get collective bargaining agents. So the city, which was our boss, made sure that they didn't give it to us, that the elections held and the people that won were the anti-communist in the teachers union, in the teachers movement. They became known as the United Federation of Teachers, UFT. My heart and my devotion is still with the old TU, the New York Teachers Union. You should, if you want to get a good book on that, get the book by Celia, Celia, Celia Zittraum, Z like in zebra, Z-I-T Zittraum. She was a member of the CP, and she was a member of the New York Teachers Union, and she wrote an excellent book. We would be great if we could reprint that book, by the way. Nobody has reprinted it, and it was way back in the early 60s. But it shows how you can build a union that's class conscious and how to go about it. It's called the New York Teachers Union, 1916 to 19 something. So you should all write that down, and I suggest that we get that book reprinted. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelo. Another great example. A couple of responses to what Angelo said first. For a lot of what he said at the beginning, with getting a petition and organizing a union, go back to our YouTube channel. Our second class for the Harry Bridges School of Labor last year was on external organizing or organizing outside of a union. So essentially organizing a new union. It's a great class, great resource. If you are not a union member and you seek to organize your workplace, that is a great reference point. And of course, we have members that have been involved in organizing unions. Several of them are not here right now, and they were also great people to get in contact with. And also another great example of what Angelo was talking about was the United Radio Electrical and Machine Workers Union, or UE. I know in our last part 2 of the history of the CIO, we talked about them a little bit. But they are another one that went through a protracted battle as a class-oriented union. Even as great as the CIO was for class-oriented unionism, towards its end, it fell into business unionism, and it fell into and it used McCarthyism to push out all class-oriented elements, whether they be communist or not. And one of the things they did was they worked with the bosses, specifically at places like Westinghouse and General Electric and whatnot. And they created a new union, the IUE, or the International Union of Electrical Radio Machine Workers Union. And they essentially split the union and ran a lot of these elections to take the bargaining unit away from the UE and split off. And there was several good books on that. A great book is the Electrical Unions in the Cold War. But keep an eye on that. So if there's no more questions or comments,
Yeah. So my other dad was a labor. He was a union leader. I don't know what position he was at Georgia Pacific. They ended up laying off a bunch of the old workers, and he doesn't get access to any of like he had a pension, but I don't know exactly what happened. He didn't get fired with cause or anything. They laid off a bunch of workers. It happened in 2008, 2007, when the economy was crashing. It's when this happened. But a bunch of people, my grandpa was in the union. He wasn't a leader. He lost his job too. I just don't know why they couldn't keep their jobs. I don't know what they could have done. because they were there for like 20 plus years, both of them. So I really don't know.
I would love to talk to you about this. I'm sure there's more details that would.
My dad will be at the Congress, so we can talk about this with him
That'll
too.
be great.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's details that will put it a little bit easier in perspective to understand. Unfortunately, like when workshops close, work sites close, there's really nothing you can do.
No.
That's happened throughout. That's happened all over the place. How I'm a bus driver in New York. We have a group. We still have these buses in my depot I work out of. We got the buses about 12 years ago. Well, about 11 years ago, the company that made those buses went out of business. It was a union shop in upstate New York. And we still have the sticker of the union local on the window of those buses, windows of those buses. You look up that union local, it says defunct. It's a story that's gone on throughout this country. And that's why the organizing must never stop. It must keep going and even increase. Because we need to keep pace of what the work, the fight back from the bosses. All right, so we'll go out to our closeout slides. Just give me a second. I gotta bring it back to that. All right. Harry Bridges School of Labor, once again, is put on by the Labor United Educational League. And you can find us on various social media platforms, including Twitter at Lul_US, on Instagram at Lul.US, on Facebook at laborunited.lul. And you can also find us on YouTube at Labor United, where you can find past classes from the Harry Bridges School of Labor. And you can find us on the internet at www.lul.us, as well as our publication, Labor Today, at labortoday.lul.us. And just a quick reminder for this month, we usually do 2 sessions on Wednesday and Saturday. We will not be doing that this month. We just have tonight. As Saturday will be in preparations for Lul's first Congress, which will take place on Sunday morning. But with that, next month we'll be back to 2 classes, but it will be a week later than normal, as the first Wednesday of the month is May Day, so we'll be out with May Day actions. So our class next month will be Wednesday, May 8th and Saturday, May 11th. Wednesday, May 8th will be at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Saturday will be at May 11th, we'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. And the topic will be part 2 on internal organizing. And once again, that was our 3rd class last year, internal organizing, or organizing within existing unions. It's very important and such a deep topic. We could do a myriad of sessions on it, and we're just going to keep on going. And it's very important, especially with the way we need to organize the rank and file movement within these unions. So please spread the word on next month's class. It will be a very important topic. And we will close out tonight with the classic labor song, Solidarity Forever, the Pete Seeger's version.
No sound, Scott.
For the union mates. Solidarity.